Hello and welcome to Quines Cast, Scotland's intersectional feminist arts podcast. My name is Hannah Lavery.
And I am Caitlin Skinner, and welcome to this, the second episode in our second series of Quines Cast. Today's theme is loss.
On each episode, we invite some of the leading feminist writers, poets, playwrights and musicians to respond to our theme.
Today, we'll be hearing from musician Rachel Sermani, author Catherine Simpson, poet Catherine Wilson Garry, and you will also hear a short play by Apphia Campbell.
Quines Cast is brought to you by feminist theatre company Stella Quines in association with the Travis Theatre.
And the word Quines, if you didn't know already, is a Scottish word for women. It's really lovely to be here with you, Hannah, and to be creating a space on the Quines Cast to talk about maybe the tough stuff. And we've got some really thoughtful and super intelligent women artists here to respond to our theme. It feels like maybe a bit of a change of tone for us because we're often looking at themes that get us riled up, the things that we want to rebel against, living under a patriarchy. Whereas today we're talking, I guess, more about that emotional side. Do you want to say a little bit about why we've chosen this theme?
I think it's something we've been wanting to do for quite a while, actually. And I think we talked about doing this in season 1. You know, when I think about how this podcast came about, it was because we felt in that walk, that lockdown walk, a real profound loss of connection and friendship and being in community. And I think that we have experienced so many losses through the pandemic, but I think through our lives we experience loss in lots of different ways, whether that's in grief, whether that's loss and heartbreak, a loss of identity, a loss of who we think we might be. And so we wanted to offer not grief, but loss as a theme and to see what our discussion group could offer us to help us navigate that. It's something that we and how our artists would respond to it as well. And I think what we spoke about a lot when we were thinking about this was that loss is something that we are often and we are sort of encouraged to deal with on our own. And actually, it felt really important to do a podcast on loss because we felt that we could learn from each other how to navigate that, and we could learn from each other's wisdoms. But actually, it was really important to sort of to kind of be able to talk about it, to say, actually, this is not something, you know, the way in which we live and maybe the common thread through all of our lives is loss. And we have some wonderful contributions, which I think, Caitlin, you can talk to us a little bit about.
Yeah, those, I guess, different kinds of loss, different ways in is definitely how our contributors have taken the theme this week, you know, from the things that maybe you're quite happy to lose, that kind of freeness of letting go, or maybe the kind of loss that we maybe don't acknowledge or talk about that much. And we will also be touching on themes around grief and death and bereavement. So please do take care of yourselves out there, listeners. We place a content warning here, and we'll try and give you a bit of a heads up when the more emotional stuff is coming up. And you never know what's going to be meaningful to you and what's going to maybe make you feel the sad stuff. And we want to create a space where we can hold that. And we do have these incredibly brilliant artists who really can hold those emotions within their work. But as you're listening, please feel free to pause the podcast, come back later on, or maybe just skip ahead, actually, if that's appropriate.
And that, I suppose the idea about holding the space and being able to create a kind of atmosphere where it felt all right to kind of be in that, in your feelings. We invited the absolutely wonderful singer-songwriter, Rachel Sermani. Rachel Sermani is a Scottish-based singer-songwriter. Her music brims with dreamy indie folk pop that speaks of the struggle and desire to flow, to love, to live, to feel. And sometimes her songs speak of the rare moments of quiet still found in the midst of the struggle and desire. And I really feel that it's important to open with Rachel and to close with Rachel to sort of, I suppose, as you were saying, to kind of create this space where we can be okay with all our losses. So let's go to Rachel.
I'm very glad to be here and to get the opportunity to have some form of offering an input. And I feel like song is a good medium for speaking on this subject, amongst many others. It's my go-to. have so many that I've just been trying to decide what angle I take first. So I think I will start in this theme, which is I was learning about like the Celtic wheel, and they speak of the directions and how in each direction there are many different governing sort of aspects. And in the West, you've got the water as the West's element, but also that is where the end of things resides. The sort of other side of grief would be gratitude. So I'm going to go along the themes of what sometimes losing something and feeling grief then compels in you. Moving on. Wish I showed my love, wish I let you know my feelings, wish I said the words I wanted to say. Standing in the hall, you put your arms around me, wish I could go back to that day. So I had to show my love, had to let him know my feelings, had to read the words I'd written down. Lying on a bed in the Paris afternoon light, couldn't look him in the eye, so I turned around. Did not show my love, never took shade beneath those branches, never said hello, never said goodbye. A man in a machine has you scream forth from your mother. I am there to see, and so I cry, for I wish I showed my love, wish I let you know my feelings, wish I said the words I wanted to say. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We'll have more from her to close us out at the end of our show.
For each episode in this season, we have commissioned a reflection piece to pose some ideas that get us thinking on our theme. And this week we have the brilliant and very funny Catherine Simpson. Catherine has published 2 memoirs, When I Had a Little Sister and One Body, which was shortlisted for the Non-Fiction Book of the Year 2022 in the Scottish National Book Awards. And the audio version, which is narrated by Catherine, has been selected for World Book Night this year, so do check that out. And here she reads her excellent piece about growing older and coming into your own.
So later this year, I will reach my 60th birthday. When I was a child, the phrase "a 40-year-old woman" was a code for an old woman. A 60-year-old woman was beyond old. They were literally my grandmother, a woman with a grey perm and a pack-a-mac, a widow who was always off to the over-60s club to do handicrafts, or to go on coach trips with them to the Isle of Man, or to chat with the other widows who all addressed each other by their married titles. My grandma's two companions were Mrs. Stott and Mrs. Robinson, and to them she was Mrs. Sutcliffe. I remember Grandma saying that as you got older, you slowly lost everyone who called you by your first name. At that time, I thought anyone more than about 22 and a half was over the hill and disappearing fast down the slippery slope of marriage, children and grandchildren to the grave. The view from here is different. 60 is the age traditionally considered to be old age. People have told me it's a horrible birthday. I don't agree. I'd rather reach it than not. I think of my 60 years as years in the bank, a bank full of memories and experience. Ageing gets a bad rap, particularly for women. But I've found ageing to be a process of unlearning, of undoing, of adapting, of letting go, of losing the things that no longer serve me, if they ever did. Personally, I have lost restraint. I no longer worry about what future employers will make of my social media posts, my tattoos, or my swearing. I have lost all the fucks I ever had to give about job interviews. I have lost the desire to delay gratification. I might be willing to wait until the end of the week, but really I want gratification today. I have lost a hovering, nameless shame. It took me a long time, but I can now talk about periods, menopause, abortion, and women's bodies as though they are not shameful, because they aren't. I have lost a wish to please after a lifetime of people-pleasing. So much time has been wasted on a thankless and fruitless task. I have lost a whole lot of I shoulds and I musts. I have lost a lot of guilt. Guilt that I wasn't doing enough and that I wasn't doing it well enough. Guilt that I wasn't earning enough, that in some way I was not pulling my weight in the world. I have lost one or two frenemies. Life is too short for frenemies. I have lost count of the number of friends I've got, the books I've read, the people I've loved along the way. I have lost fear. For much of my life, I lost my voice, but I found it again when I started to write, aged 45. And at 60, I find I can write fearlessly. To lose is the work of a lifetime, an ongoing project of letting go. I recently read, "Let go or be dragged," and nobody wants to be dragged. I have lost my trademark dark hair. Sometimes we need to lose the old to make way for the new. Now my hair is silver and I like it. When I am 60, I will gain a bus pass, about which I am genuinely excited. I plan to travel around Scotland on the bus collecting little badges from Scottish towns to put on my leather jacket like some alternative Hell's Angel. This will be my equivalent of my grandma's over 60s club. And incidentally, even though my grandma had a grey perm, a pack-a-mac and membership of the over 60s, she also drove a sports car and travelled the world. So let's not stereotype old women. The loss of my youth, and now the loss of my middle age, has helped me gain perspective about what is important. And I know for sure that what is least important is what other people think. Not all our losses are chosen. Some losses are foisted upon us. I have lost the right to a pension at 60, something I was told for 40 odd years that I was entitled to, but for which I will now have to wait until I'm 67. I suppose in doing so, I have gained 7 more years of not being officially considered an old age pensioner. I have lost dearly beloveds. These losses are losses we grow around. They become part of us. We accept them because we have to, and we learn from them too. Tragic losses can make us more humane, more understanding, and more grateful for what we had and what we still have today, right here in this moment. When I was a teenager and discovered Nietzsche, my friend and I used to say to each other, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," which is not true, of course. Some of the things that don't kill you leave you walking wounded, unless you learn to process them and to use them. I recently read on Twitter, "Did my trauma make me stronger? It did not, but it did make me funnier." Losses are universal. Everyone suffers from them in one way or another. Losses have given me material as a memoir writer and have enabled me to connect with people in a way I could never previously have done. My mother used to say, "I wish I was 21 again, but knew what I know now." And I used to think, why doesn't she just tell me what she knows now and save me a lot of trouble? But we've all got to learn for ourselves. We must all face our own losses and gather strength as we go. I've lost the ability to run. On some days, I have lost the ability to walk without a stick, which is painful and frustrating. I know that if I ever get the ability to walk pain-free, I will be grateful for every step. Meantime, I've become much more patient with other slow walkers, people who I would previously have considered to be getting in the way. I have lost the belief that I will never die. Having cancer taught me that. Even those who live a long life are only here for the briefest time. So, despite the losses along the way, I do not feel diminished by age. I am everything I have ever been. I am every experience I have ever had, every person I have ever met, every conversation I have ever been a part of, plus this. I am not at a loss being 60. Loss is a beginning, the start of a new chapter, not an ending. Loss is normal. Loss is life. Do not be afraid of it.
I absolutely loved that. I loved the idea about growing older being seen as a positive thing and about really embracing that. And just the kind of wisdom and humour in that just really resonated with me. I mean, I've got a way to go before 60, but I am very conscious that I'm getting older and about how actually that isn't valued in society, but actually as an experience, coming into yourself, coming to know yourself, to be giving less of a fuck. Feels really true, and actually we don't always value those voices, and especially from women. And so and actually seeing loss as a kind of, we grow around it, I felt that was really beautiful. And I know that later on other artists responded to that from Catherine. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Catherine. What a wonderful way to open.
Yeah, it really sets us up. Loss is life. Don't be afraid of it. So it really sets us up for the episode ahead. As always, alongside the wisdom from the feminist artists who we invite to contribute to the podcast, throughout this episode, you're going to hear fragments of real life conversations from our discussion group.
And if you've listened to previous episodes, you may feel like you know them already. But this is a group of women from a range of backgrounds and experiences, including arts, journalism, medicine, museum activism, social services, and we've recorded this really beautiful conversation around the theme of loss and how we navigate that. And you will hear clips of that throughout this episode.
The discussion group are Lisa George, Clementine Burnley, Carrie Lunan, Beat Asha, Zandra Yeaman and Nassim Rebecca Assel. And we're really grateful for their contribution. Here they are.
I have to say, for me, loss and grief is cyclical. For me, it's something that I live with every single day. You know, the loss of my childhood, the loss of my identity as someone grown up in Glasgow of mixed heritage, mixed race. You know, it never leaves me. Strangely enough, it makes me sound like a negative person, but it's something. I'm not negative. I'm actually I'm an optimist, but part of that optimism is because of those experiences of loss and grief from such an early age.
The biggest loss I'm feeling at the minute is like, it's tied to like that, what you're saying about sort of being mixed is like I can't go to Iran, and I just feel like I've lost like a huge part of myself by not being able to physically go and know this country that is my birthright and is like so part of me. And I'm finding that really, really difficult, is because, again, we don't have the language for it. We don't know how to talk about that in like diasporic communities. Like, how do you talk about that loss of place and heritage? And there's no solution for it. And it's especially like in exiled communities, there's refugees and, you know, people that can't go back for political reasons. There's no mass understanding or mass appreciation of like how profound that loss of selfhood and place can be for people.
I was really thinking about something like losses that I've experienced which haven't been related to people, because I've lost a lot of people too, right? And I've known that those losses were always about me. They weren't about these people, because they weren't there to experience whatever I was experiencing. It was about really what was happening to me in their absence. But I also remember when my long-term relationship ended, the grief that I felt was total. And it was not total because I was losing a person. I was losing an entire idea of myself, right? Responsibility, which I felt I had to my daughters. The failure that I felt. And it was really about not being the person I thought I was. And also about a lot of time spent in delusion, literally in something that just wasn't real.
What I really loved about that discussion was that sort of opening out of what loss is. I think when we first did this, we sort of assumed that a lot of the conversations would be around grief, and they definitely have been, but also the fact that actually we experience loss in lots of different ways. And I think, that point about, exile communities and refugees and people who have shared identities or shared heritages, that idea that it can be a loss of some part of themselves, a place, a community, and then that idea that loss is about a loss of self and a loss of who you thought you were. And I think that the play coming up really speaks to that as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, our next piece is a play that I think explores a loss that all of us are likely to have experienced, but perhaps haven't acknowledged or recognised as an important emotion or a difficult emotion. So this is a play by Apphia Campbell. Apphia is a writer and performer originally from the United States of America. Her critically acclaimed play, Black is the Colour of My Voice, about Nina Simone, has been touring the UK for a few years now, and it really is fantastic. We're delighted to say that Stella Quines and the Lyceum Theatre are bringing her play, And Around and Around We Go, about two black women activists across the generations, to the Lyceum in Edinburgh in the autumn this year. If you're around, please do come check it out. But today we're going to hear her play, which is called Be Without You, and it's performed by Saskia Ashdown and Renee Williams.
And that will be followed by another clip from our discussion group.
How have you been?
Great. According to my photographs, I'm in a constant state of euphoria.
Photos can lie. Believe me, I know. Remember when I had my wisdom tooth pulled and we had...
a new story to my memory log.
No. It's silly.
We're trained not to judge our clients.
I didn't think you were... It's just... She would finish the story at that point. So we'd do this thing, kind of tag team thing, where I'd say one part, then she'd say a part. You know, social interaction.
I'm aware of this concept.
You were all... She was a very good storyteller. Anyway, that was a long time ago.
According to your file, it's been 18 years since you last spoke.
18 years. You got married. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was in Barcelona, a very beautiful wedding. According to my photographs, there were at least 45 people in attendance.
I wasn't there.
No, you do not appear in any photographs.
Why?
I don't understand the question.
Why wasn't I invited to your wedding?
I cannot answer that.
You looked beautiful, by the way.
My face is shaped in a symmetrical way that most people find appealing.
Yeah, I guess.
According to her profile, Stephanie used a variety of cleansers. We'd be happy to garner a list for an additional $14.99 per search. And you too can look just as young as Stephanie.
Just as young.
While we can't promise results, we can assure you'll be happy with the minor improvements to your skin.
Is there some other setting on you?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, can you be a bit more
Happy? Sad? Glad?
human?
We have a setting called chill.
Let's try that. Is that music playing out of your mouth? Do you mind? It's a little weird.
We found music is more soothing while we register your changes.
Music is great, but not coming out of your open mouth like a human speaker. Understand?
Ah, yes, I do. Are you ready to proceed?
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Caroline.
Carol is fine.
I'm sorry?
Just call me Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Hi.
Is this better?
What's this supposed to be?
This setting is called chill.
But what personality is this?
This is Stephanie as a yoga instructor. She's just finished a class, so she's at her most relaxed state. Chill.
It's kind of hard to have a real conversation with someone when they seem half asleep.
I can adjust to an hour after yoga, when her brain's at its most active state.
Yeah, do that.
Is the world amazing? Is life amazing? Aren't we just all so
Yeah, that shit ain't gonna work. How about a midway point between the last one and this one?
adjusting?
Steph?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Sure.
Is this better?
Much. I can work with this.
Glad to hear. What are we doing here, Carol?
Phew, you sound... She's very direct like that. I wanted to see you, talk to you. I've been reaching out, you know. And I keep hearing our song on the radio. Do you remember it?
Remind me.
It goes, baby, I've been too strong for too long, and I can't be without you, baby.
I know this song. Be Without You by Mary J. Blige.
Yeah. Remember when we first heard it? We were coming back from that mall in Jersey, stuck in traffic. It was raining, could hardly see a foot in front of us. And when it came on, we turned the radio all the way up, and by the third chorus, we were screaming it at the top of our lungs. Too hard to fake it. Nothing can replace it. Call the radio if you just can't be without your baby.
It's a good song.
It is, right? It's still banging. Did you have it at your wedding?
I don't know.
Remember, we said we'd have it for our first dance at our weddings. Well, I said my wedding because you said you'd never get married, so.
I did?
Yeah. So imagine my surprise when I saw your wedding photos that I wasn't a part of. I didn't even know you were engaged. So, did you? have it as your first dance song?
Maybe. I can't locate that information.
Nobody recorded it on a phone?
I can't locate that information.
Your husband is very handsome.
Our equally attractive facial features complement each other.
I got engaged recently.
Congratulations.
I reached out to you when I first met him.
I see.
His name is Morris.
That's a good name.
He's a nice guy. You'd like him. A lawyer.
Good occupation.
Knows how to argue.
Not too much, I hope.
He says I'm always a worthy competitor when it comes to negotiating trash duty.
Sounds like a pleasant match.
A few months ago, we were riding in his car. Our song came on. I'd been avoiding it, changing the channel whenever I heard the first few chords. But he started singing it, and it just, I felt so, I wanted to. Did you read them? Did she read any of my messages?
Would you really like to know that?
I would.
Yes. She read all your messages.
Damn.
I'm sorry
Why are you sorry?
for not having the answer you wanted.
At least it's honest. Do you know why?
Know what?
The reason we're not friends anymore.
We grew apart.
I know, I wrote that down. But that doesn't happen, right? We were so close.
Friendships are just like any other relationship. They need to be watered and nurtured. Did you look after your relationship? Did you nurture it?
It all started when I moved away.
Long distance is hard for any relationship.
You tried to keep in touch, I'll give you that.
Maybe you wanted to leave me behind.
You had your own life.
There are a number of emails from me, but very few responses from you.
Our friendship couldn't stay as it was.
Why not?
It was impossible. 12-hour time difference. I'd be sleeping when you called.
I still call.
And I called you back. And then we had a fight.
But didn't you reconcile?
It wasn't the same.
Why didn't you call?
You always called first.
I was waiting.
You were waiting?
In your last correspondence, you said you'd call.
I did?
Yes.
So it's my fault?
It would appear so.
Damn AI. You take no prisoners.
No, we believe everyone should be free to be their authentic selves.
No, I meant you don't sugarcoat everything.
Most people using our services are looking for unknown answers, but the only solutions we can provide are based on the facts.
Cold, honest facts.
Yes.
Answers. Maybe I am looking. I don't know. I read this article the other day, and there was this term. I can't remember. You know it? When you're ghosted by a friend, you don't get closure.
Ambiguous loss.
Yeah, that's it. They were talking about the shame, around losing a friend and naming those feelings without trying to push them away provides solace.
That article was shared on your Facebook.
Did she see it?
She did.
Does she feel that way?
About what?
About me. Does she miss me?
I don't know.
Well, can't you make something up?
We're not allowed to improvise.
Is there a setting where you can? I need to know that she cares, that she cared, that our friendship meant something to her, that it wasn't just me, that we meant something to each other.
I can't give you that.
What can you give me?
Closure. It seems like you really need that.
The last time I wrote you and you didn't respond, I got angry. really angry. So I wrote this email telling you everything that went wrong in our relationship, everything you did wrong. And just as I was about to press send, I got a pop-up for this service. Need some closure? It said. And at that moment, I felt it, that ambiguous loss. Because I didn't know why I was so angry. I didn't understand why we weren't friends, why you couldn't just answer me, tell me, so I can move on with my life. I didn't want to mourn you when I knew you were still out there, alive and happy, living. And I'm just here, missing you, wondering what went wrong, wondering what's wrong with me. Because, I'm not just mourning our relationship, I'm mourning that person I was when I was with you. A whole part of myself that no one else can see. An authenticity that no one else will know because those memories, that person only existed with you. And I miss her. I miss you.
I see.
I deleted your number and your Facebook profile yesterday. It was time. It is time to let you go.
How did that feel?
Not good, but it's shitty. That's all.
What would you like to do now?
I don't know.
How about we sing your song?
Really?
Everyone ends with a song.
Really?
Music is a strong emotional trigger.
Okay. Do you want to start?
After you.
Okay. Anybody who's ever loved, you know just what I feel. Too hard to fake it. Nothing can replace it. Call the radio if you just can't be without your baby.
Transforming it into something else. And that can be like, for me, that's usually art, about like memorializing these existences or these lives, and that can be like lives of individuals that I've lost, or it could be lives of myself that I've lost, or experiences that I've lost, or like all the people that I've been or could have been, but creating something new from that and using that as a purpose is what makes it bearable and makes it more, I think in my head, justifiable to experience these things. It feels less random if you can use it for something good.
And I think the things that we maybe, cling on to and feel very dear because they're quite existential, when we lose them, it's not always a bad thing. So if we lose status and power, then we gain humility. And if we lose something or someone that we love, then we gain empathy. And if we lose pride and independence, then we can gain vulnerability. And vulnerability is not necessarily a bad thing.
I think as long as you're supported to even acknowledge it, I've done lots of work around adoption and people that have been adopted, and I think a lot of adults and very young children that have been adopted don't have that sense of their loss being, I suppose, acknowledged. That the children that are adopted often have had a loss of their birth family, that identity, then the loss of maybe foster carers that they'd lived with before, and the adults around them have often been really bad at supporting that, at helping people to understand their story and the full extent of that. I think not giving space for that loss Do you know, I think people feel like if I speak about your past, then that's going to make you feel unsettled, or it's going to make you feel that what we have as a family is less.
Ignoring it, packing it away, I don't think that helps. I think that it's an actual reality that deserves to be honored. And I think that once it's fully honored, the quality changes. And there's something very precious about loss.
I love that Apphia has chosen to write her play about losing a friendship. And there's, our female friendships particularly feel so precious to us. And it's often not acknowledged how deep that grief can be. And I don't know about you, Hannah, but I so relate to that idea of, I guess, seeing a friend or a former friend in their life continue when you're not part of that, and realising that maybe you lost something and you didn't really know how it happened or why it happened, but you can't reach it anymore. It's not there for you. And I think it's beautiful that that's connecting to what the discussion group are saying there about how the importance of giving space for loss, no matter what kind of loss that is. Like, we maybe have quite public forms of loss around, when there's a death, there's a funeral, there's a ritual, there's a process to go through, and it's often quite public and acknowledged, but there's other forms which are maybe more hidden and maybe not acknowledged.
Yeah, and I think there was also something in that play about not only losing a friendship, but losing memories, that lovely memory of being teenagers together on that cusp of life. It was like a loss of somebody that knows that part of you. And I think that can be quite profound, those sort of people that represent a part of your life, and when they are no longer in your life. So I thought that was really beautiful. And I think the discussion group, talking about the importance of acknowledging loss, and actually an unacknowledged loss, it kind of festers, isn't it? And actually, when Clementine said that beautiful thing, is that an acknowledged loss then changes its quality, and how they were talking about how actually there's something really positive. And Kerry was talking about, these losses, actually we gain something from that: vulnerability, empathy. I think there was something really positive in that, and something really to learn from that. But yeah, wonderful. So our next guest is the wonderful poet Catherine Wilson Garry, who had the honour of editing her latest pamphlet, Another Word for Home is Blackbird. And she speaks really beautifully about grief and the accumulation of grief on one's life, and references back to Catherine in her introduction about the idea that we grow around grief. I'm really delighted to be able to share her work with you.
And just a heads up, Catherine is going to look at themes around bereavement, around the loss of a loved one. So, maybe this isn't for you right now, and that's totally fine.
And Catherine's poetry will be followed by another clip from our discussion group.
One day I realised I would never know what he smelled like. Unless he smelt like the box in the attic we kept his clothes in. Unless he smelt like my perfume on his borrowed t-shirts, my smell, erasing his like a palimpsest. Unless he smelled like our pet cat who outlived him, who entered every room surprised, as if still searching. I would never hear his voice without the distortion of a video camera, without it being second-hand. I would never get scratched by his beard, never talk about philosophy, never play video games, never call him on a telephone, never get lost and yell at each other, never eat something he cooked, never compare inherited ailments, never watch his hands as he put a plaster on my knee. And he will never meet my friends, never walk round my flat and grumble at the cobwebs. In a way, he missed out just as much as I did. This is Birdwatching Part 1. When his father died, my dad stopped drinking and started birdwatching, as if reshifting his memory like clearing out an attic. Woodpeckers arrived, tempted by Dobby's premium seed mix, each one adorned with a red flash atop its head like a couple of country anarchists. Just off the bus, I see him stare through the window, wondering if he is conscious of the weight he has attached onto such hollow bones, until a baby, fresh to flight, slaps the kitchen window like a taut, wide drum. I've never seen a man fold like that, as if taking a long letter to be pushed into an envelope that was never sent, stuck at the back of a cupboard the recipient unable to read it. Thank you. This is birdwatching part 2. When it is too much, I take myself birdwatching. This practice is not about collection or identification or even knowledge. It is about movement. It is about the thrum beneath a tiny chest. It is about the dead beetles in the dirt, the dried up patches of dirt. It is about the humble species like blackbirds and house sparrows and wrens, and when it is too much, perhaps even seagulls. It is about the way our lives are so small, so painfully small. It is their ignorance held like a handful of walnuts. I borrow it for now. I've got a couple poems left. One thing I wanted to write a bit about was the idea of collective grief, because I think I was thinking a lot about things that I've had in my own life, but I kind of think a lot about the things that we are all grieving together. And I think things like COVID really brought that home, of like, we all kind of went through this experience together. But I also think just like things like climate change and just kind of gesturing vaguely at the political situation we're in, I feel like we almost are kind of carrying something that I would say is very akin to grief. So yeah, I kind of went away and thought about it, and it was fascinating how a poem that was so kind of people-watchy, post-COVID, post the last few years politically, post all the kind of strikes, gained this new meaning. So this is called Sonder. Every time we walk down the streets, 1,000 lives buzz around our heads like honeybees, busily homing their lives. I share my streets with philosophers, builders, lawyers, runners, trombone players, tram conductors, women who wanted to be scientists when they grew up, a picture book writer who stamps inspiration into the pillow creases of small minds. I want to snap this crowd in half, to gift it to the sad faces pressed on the bus windows, or the young widows, or the elderly who still volunteer every Sunday, or the little girl who gets bullied at school for the way her front tooth refuses to fit in. I want to love these clumsy gods until my heart breaks, until I can't conjure up the words to do humanity justice, until the only skill I can write on my CV to explain all the gaps is people watching, 22 years. I am lucky enough to be watching the first stone dropped in the pond and see its ripple buzzing forever around my architecture. In the late night small talk of Memento Mori, of the first poem on the stage that stays long after the microphone is switched off. In the quiet nights where love is soldered and burns so bright the light bulbs shatter off at what they have witnessed. I want to collect more stones, pebble dash my pockets until I am heavy with possibility. Leave them instead of flowers that will float away on the breeze, their presence persistently marking once they were here. They did this. Watch the sand shift around the existence from the bus driver who builds the schedules, to the barista who brews the start of the day like an orchestral warm-up, to the students with 2 eyes on tomorrow, to the protesters with 2 fists at the past, to the musicians who spend no time practicing because they're too busy tuning songs into pitches, to the librarian who categorizes creation, to the nurses and postmen, the teachers and rail workers, the cleaners and call centre agents. I want the world to hold you better, for your joy to be unshakable, for the streets to float with the faces you hit with your everyday miracles. In the winter, a bumblebee queen shakes her whole body to keep her eggs warm. The movement of one is felt for a lifetime. The last poem is where the title comes from, and I'm so thankful to Hannah, because originally this pamphlet was called Birdwatching, and then I got really scared that like people would ask for a refund because they'd be like, this doesn't tell me how to birdwatch at all, this is rubbish. And Hannah was really helpful and helped me go through like all the poems and find like a nice line that stood out. And so this is the last poem in the collection, and it's where the title comes from. So this is Blackbird. Before he was my husband, he told me that another word for home is blackbird. What else feels as reliable as that call, the opening of the year, which all other birds can only ever hope to catch up to? When I am travel drunk in airports, the first noise I hear is them yelling at a lamppost. We look out the window of the house he grew up in, and I am thankful for the blackbirds we have found together. Thank you.
I think every loss is so different. I don't think I've got better at it. At the start of this year, my dad died, and I was thinking about how I've dealt with that compared to previous losses. I think I gave myself more time. I think I felt able to take the time that I needed and to be kind, and maybe I haven't always done that. But the other thing I noticed was that was a loss that was really quite public. Everybody knows about it. It wasn't one of those ambiguous losses that nobody's really sure of, like pregnancy loss, which I experienced when I was younger. One of those secret things that nobody really necessarily knows it's happened, and you're expected to go on with life as normal. So I think the experience of my dad dying felt very different from that, and in some ways was easier because people were more aware and more able to support me.
In terms of learning from loss, I think probably the biggest loss for me would have been loss of a parent as well. So my mum died when she was 58. Which is not that much older than I am now. And it was quite a traumatic loss because she had a brain tumour. So we felt we lost her before we lost her. So there were multiple layers of loss. But I think the thing that really kind of sticks with me in terms of what I learned from it was when she died, she was in a kind of long-term hospital ward waiting for a placement for somewhere where she was going to be looked after. And she died reasonably unexpectedly. And so me and my two younger sisters were called into the ward to, say goodbye to her. And the nurses had done an amazing job, and she looked peaceful. But the thing that really sort of sticks with me is that she was either a domestic or a nursing assistant came into the room and said to the three of us, "Come outside with me, I'll make you a cup of tea." We sat outside in the courtyard, and she sat with us and said, "This will make you all better people." Quite a brave thing to say, and at the time felt quite a hard thing to hear.
I think I'd been quite annoyed.
And then I thought, but it stuck with me, and I think she was absolutely right. But what really stuck with me was not the fact that she had said that and that I learned from it, but was maybe also the fact that in terms of the hierarchy of power within a hospital ward, she would have maybe been quite near the bottom of that traditional hierarchy in terms of her power within the team, and yet she was the one that had the bravest conversation with us.
The wonderful Catherine Wilson Garry, followed by our discussion group. Catherine's poetry, I just think it speaks so beautifully about grief, actually, and I love the kind of the bird watching and the way in which the way it's just a part of your everyday. That thing about living with grief and loss becomes who you are, not in a sort of negative way, but almost like with Andrew was talking earlier, there's an optimism to it. We see the world differently, we experience the world differently. And when Lisa and Kerry were talking about death of a parent, it's a similar thing. I think that those moments of loss, when you lose a parent, it changes who you are a bit. It's like a kind of before and after. And I think that, but that after is also a place where you've learned something, you've become something more, I think, perhaps, eventually. And I love that thing about that brave discussion, you'll become better people. And I can imagine that felt quite hard at the time, but there is some truth in that, I think.
Absolutely, and it feels like Catherine's actually a great example of what we talked about earlier in the podcast about art making coming out of grief and bereavement. And she's reading there from her debut poetry pamphlet, which you should all definitely check out. Her work is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that idea about turning to art in these moments, I mean, often the only times people experience poetry, or the first time they experience poetry is at funerals, isn't it? So it's that, or also at christenings. It's kind of that cradle to grave art form, isn't it? It's kind of there for us. We turn to it in those moments. And also the other thing we turn to is song. So, and as I said earlier, we invited Rachel Sermani to sort of hold us through this episode. She opened for us and she is going to close for us. So I am delighted to welcome back the absolutely wonderful Rachel Sermani.
when the silence is all that I can hear, and the darkness is all that I can see, and the bosom of earth is all that I have left to rest my weary head. Ooh, mother, come take me home. Ooh, mother, come take me home. I'm gonna miss you more than I miss our mother. I'm gonna go before you go. I'm gonna kick this door, see what's on the other side, find a place to lay my weary head. Ooh, mother, come take me home. Ooh, mother, come take me home. Ooh, mother, come take me home. You know, Father, when you're told your time has come, there's just one single thread of gold, that's all, just one. No thing to hold, no thing to lose. Just rest your heart in love. Ooh, mother, come take me home. Ooh, mother, come take me home. Ooh, mother, come take me home. I keep looking west to remind me that all things must end, and I keep looking east to remind me that light will return, and I keep looking out to remind me that no one's without it, and I keep looking in to remind me that I got what I need. Mother, Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and we really hope you enjoyed our show. And if you did, please tell your pals, like, subscribe, and maybe write us a review. It really helps others to find our show.
The third episode of Quines Cast Season 2 will be out next week, and the theme is pleasure. Very much looking forward to this one.
Our guests include musician Horace MacDonald, poet Liz Lockhead, and sex educator Ruth Elliott, and a short play by Steph Smith. I hope you can join us then. This episode of Quines Cast is created and presented by Hannah Lavery and Caitlin Skinner, featuring original work by our contributors Rachel Sermani, Catherine Simpson, Catherine Wilson Garry, and Apphia Campbell.
Performers in Be Without You by Apphia Campbell were Saskia Ashdown and Renee Williams.
Our editor was Alina Rafai, project producers Barbie Lyon, sound engineer David Key.
The Stellar Quines team are General Manager Barbie Lyon, Associate Director of Engagement Beth Godfrey, Artistic Director and CEO Caitlin Skinner, Company Administrator and Young Quines Producer Erin McGee.
Quines cast image was by Julia Francis Dugan. Quines Cast is possible because of funding from Creative Scotland and support from our partners, the Travis Theatre, and from our supporters, the Quines Collective.
Stellar Quines is an intersectional feminist theatre company based in Edinburgh. This year we are celebrating 30 years of keeping the fight for gender equality centre stage. It is a tough time out there for the arts at the moment, and we really need your help. So we've set up our new supporter scheme, the Quines Collective, and we're looking for new members. If you're a supporter of the arts, of feminism, if you believe that the arts has a role to play in the fight for gender justice in Scotland and beyond, then we would really love for you to be a part of Quines Collective. You can choose how much you want to donate, or if you can't contribute financially, you can also offer your time or just your good wishes. We're just happy to have you in the gang. You get special updates, a badge that says Quine on it. It comes in 3 different colours, and you get to be part of a very cool gang of folk. The money the collective raises helps us to keep delivering for the audiences, artists and communities that we serve, and we are very, very grateful for their support. You can find out more on our website at stellarquines.co.uk.